to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
March 3rd, 2010. This meeting, I have the wrong thing here.
You need mine?
Yes, I think I
Just
do.
to read it into the record?
Sorry.
That's okay.
And it's the same one. So.
Oh.
Well, this meeting was called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Law. Notices of this meeting were emailed to the Record and the Press Journal, March 1st, 2010. In addition, copies of notices were posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building and on the borough website. Roll call for council committee members. Councilman Carrick.
Here.
Councilman Manna.
Here.
Councilman Stiliano.
Here.
Also in attendance is Mayor McHale.
As many times as you've read it, have it memorized.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move to accept the agenda as presented. Could I get a second?
Sure.
Seconded by Councilman Carrick. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This is the first meeting of the year for the Ordinance and Resolutions Committee. I believe it's the first time that the committee's met in quite a while. I had asked everyone to meet tonight to discuss briefly the issue of campaign finance reform, but insofar as it is our first meeting, after we finish with that discussion, the floor is going to be open for introduction of other business. Prior to this meeting, I had Sue make copies of samples that were provided to us by other council members. These samples, just confirm that you have them. These samples include ordinances passed in other towns, as well as the 2007 Borough of Dumont Ordinance 07-1325, which addressed local campaign and political party reform. And we also, I believe, copied a model ordinance that was provided to us by Citizens Campaign, and I believe that was emailed to all the council members and presented to us at our last public meeting. The purpose, from where I'm standing, the purpose of tonight was, really just to have that initial meeting, to get this issue out on the table, to make sure that the committee members had all the samples provided to us, and then maybe briefly discuss goals and objectives, but also set a timeline for future meetings. I don't think it's prudent tonight, and I'll leave this to the members of the committee, I really don't think it's prudent tonight to get into the meat and potatoes of the issue without first allowing all the committee members to do their independent research and to analyze these samples that have been provided. There's a lot of information here, and there's really a lot to get our arms around, and I don't think we're going to be doing it in the next half hour or so. If anyone disagrees, just obviously speak up.
I think this is, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think the magnitude of the issue, and I know we've had a number of conversations both in the public forum and as well as privately, is that the issue of pay-to-play reform is directly tied to campaign finance reform, which falls under the larger aspects of the current state regulatory process. There are a number of pieces of legislation that are being moved through the legislature. As we all know, there have been a number of executive orders since Governor McGreevey, which have continued under Governor Christie, particularly the latest round affecting labor and their participation in the campaign process. I think that the package that we do have so far are comprehensive, but knowing that we have almost 500 and some odd municipalities in the state of New Jersey, and a small fraction of those have adopted some form of the model ordinance provided by Common Cause. I think it would be prudent for us to require or ask the clerk to contact the majority of those municipalities so we can kind of perform an analysis of what has worked and what hasn't worked. I also think from a legislative perspective, this committee should take testimony from interested parties, obviously our residents first and foremost, since those are the constituents that we serve by taking our oaths of office, from groups such as Urban Grassroots. I had a discussion with Paul Eisen shortly after our meeting last Tuesday. He's very excited to be able to come and speak with us.
Excellent.
I think we should engage the current Election Law Enforcement Commission and their staff. I actually have daily conversations with them because I think what we're are about to endeavor upon will not only have ramifications here within the borough of Dumont as it relates to mayoralty and council candidates, but also certainly affect school board elections as well. They fall under the Election Law Enforcement Commission, and there are a number of discrepancies in the reporting process. I think we need to acknowledge that this is a self-reporting process. There is no government oversight other than to ensure that you're meeting your filing requirements. Whether or not that information is accurate is really kind of left to if somebody checks you,
right,
then they have to react. I also think it is important to hear testimony from individuals who could potentially be affected by participating in the campaign financing process, whether they be vendors, whether they be members of labor, whether they be issue-oriented groups. I think we truly do need to do our due diligence, so that way, I think to use your words, Councilman, Mr. Chairman, so that if we're going to move in this direction, that we do it right.
Right.
And rather than be penny wise and pound foolish, to be thorough, contemplative, and lastly, exact in which direction we plan on moving as a municipality. And as I have expressed my concerns to members of the governing body and constituents and borough staff, is that we have built a very competent team of professionals that have helped us weather through a financial crisis in 2005. We finally established a solid footing in 2007 when we were released from state oversight. And I would not want to potentially prohibit them from continuing to do the work that they do for us, which I think is equitable, fair, and beyond professional. I think first and foremost, people of Gary Bisbee, our auditor, and then I think of situations such as Teaneck and West Milford, where the consequences of the legislation which they adopted had an adverse effect on the elected officials' ability to fully and effectively operate their municipal services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Mann, anything?
Yeah, I think my comments are going to be more about housekeeping. I think since we do have such a large reference material, we should kind of identify pieces that we have either by number or by a letter or something, so that when we refer to it, we know what we're looking at. I mean, we have, like you said, we have documentation from different municipalities. We have a documentation from Grassroots. We have stuff from DCA. We have stuff from ELECT. I mean, we have all different kinds of documentation. The executive orders from Corzine and now from Governor Christie.
And McGreevy as well.
And McGreevy as well, yeah. But I think that to keep this moving forward, we should kind of identify the pieces that we all should have, and not tonight obviously,
right,
but put together a glossary or a table of contents, and this way we can refer to it going forward. Because as we go through this, there's a lot of paper. And I think that you really have to kind of focus on narrowing down discussion instead of wasting time looking for what it is that we're looking for. I also think that if we're going to move with taking testimony and looking at what has worked and what hasn't worked in other municipalities, I would suggest for future meetings that we bring on counsel, just to kind of advise us of what, you know, the law is,
Right.
how it impacts the municipality, how it impacts the participants, you know, whether it be council, whether it be,
Well, one of my concerns, and Mr. Chairman, I've voiced that, is that we can't legislate in a vacuum, that the state constitution provides us with statutory guidelines as to what a municipality can and cannot legislate. The same way there are things that the governor can and cannot do without the legislative body weighing in. My inclination, if we were to do or bring on council, would be to bring in a non-conflicted firm or expert in the area. There are a number in the state of New Jersey that help develop the existing structure. I know that there are certain firms that have been qualified. I also know there are certain firms that have to be avoided under the non-fair and open process without any conflict or anything like that, in violation of our current existing procurement process.
If you could recommend a few to the committee, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, the one that comes off the top of my head is Genova Burns, Angela Genova. I know for a fact that they had Greg Nagy, who's the former election law enforcement commission executive director. He was there at the beginning of the commission, through, I believe, 2004, and has been on of council with them since then. There's Connell, there's Florio Bader Steinhardt, that's Governor Florio's firm. I believe they are listed with council. And I'll ask across the state too, because there are a number of election law people. Jack Carbone is another great guy who I think he represents the county clerk in her election law matters. But just in council, I didn't mean to kind of cut you off.
No, that's fine.
I just wanted to refocus. I think this, while we're doing this and while we're looking at moving in this direction, I think we need to have a frank and honest discussion about how campaigns are financed here in the borough of Dumont, or whether they be for municipal office or whether they be for school board office. I think we need to evaluate and look to see what went wrong with the clean elections program that was administered by the state legislature under Speaker Roberts and was experimented with in District 2 down south and District 37 here in North Jersey. I think we should discuss, at least discuss, we may not have to move on it, but at least have a discussion of public financing of campaigns, so that way these special interests or special interested parties' roles can be limited. I think that's a conversation that we need to begin with our constituents as to the actual impact of campaign finance, whether or not we think their taxpayer dollars should be steered towards.
I think you'd get a no on that one.
Well, I think we need to have a
I think,
conversation.
yeah, I agree. I think that's a valid conversation, though.
I mean, there's public financing
Public
at the
financing.
federal level, there's public financing at the state level in terms of qualification of matching funds. And obviously, I think the 800-pound gorilla in the room, though I know the Election Law Enforcement Commission has kind of tipped its toe into the pool about the recent Supreme Court ruling, which is yet the true ramifications of that ruling by the court on New Jersey's existing regulatory structure. At the moment, on its face, does not appear to be inconsistent. However, when you have a Republican state senator, Bill Baroni, who's also a constitutional attorney and a constitutional professor at Seton Hall, saying that there will be true and real implications of that ruling on the existing structure, I don't think we can ignore it.
No, that was also a 4-3 decision.
Yeah.
So great legal minds, justices on the Supreme Court, could not agree with respect to that issue. So I think you're going to get a split in New Jersey, and I think the issue's gonna gain traction here.
And by the way, though I think, and I respect the court greatly, and I respect their jurisprudence, and I agree with you, they couldn't come to.
Right.
I'm not sure we can either.
4-3. So I mean, that's as close as it gets.
They also decided the 2000 election, but anyway, we won't get into that. But I think there is a large net that needs to be cast here, and information needs to be digested, debated, and discussed. I would like to see, from my own personal perspective, is a set schedule in which we
Right.
can, whether it be this first Wednesday of the month, we're going to have a standing meeting, and so that way we can then schedule people like Paul Eisen, people like representatives from Election Law Enforcement Commission, perhaps council members from West New York, perhaps vendors who were affected indirectly or directly by certain regulatory processes. I would like to hear from board members. I know that a number of across the state of New Jersey, most people view school board elections as non-events, and yet even though you're a candidate for office, you are still required to meet the de minimis requirement of filing, and a lot of people fail to do that.
Right.
It's a simple form that you need to fill out, and a lot of people are not aware of that.
Right.
And the question is, how can we increase awareness? How can we legislate effectively, and hopefully accomplish whatever goals we set forth in our dialogue?
So Garrett, anything to add?
I believe that there is a lot of paperwork to go through. I didn't think of this before, but I believe we may have Carol call about maybe bringing other people in from different towns
Sure.
to talk about, how it's worked for them and how it's worked against them. There's a lot to do.
Yeah.
I don't know that we can really do this maybe once a month. Maybe twice a month.
I'd be agreeable to it, as long as it's a standing.
Right.
That way I make sure.
Yeah,
Because
because
I'm crazy.
you've got a big schedule.
I can't see myself in the mirror sometimes. A lot of white hair. I'm catching up to you.
Oh God, you're not gonna get to this. I'll be losing mine before you get white. This little bit of paper we got here, I was going through call stuff at home. There's a ton of paper, and I'm sure if we go to different towns to get other information, we got a lot to read.
And that's why, I think that if we put together a table of contents, so we know what we're referencing, and if we're gonna be talking about that specific subject at that point in time, in the meeting, at least we can all orient this together. What I would suggest is that, there are things in place, meaning, DCA has a document on pay-to-play based on New Jersey, ELEC Commission. The ELEC Commission has a document, that's in place also. Possibly that should be where we start, and look at what's already in place at the state side. So at least you have a point of reference, or a starting point. I would suggest that once we do that, we would look at what we have in place. So that, again, you have 2 points of reference.
Right.
And then we can start going through
Right.
The municipalities that we have, bring testimony to the table, and get input from all stakeholders that have feel they have a vested interest in this piece of legislation.
One of the things I'd like to see, and I have no problem volunteering, it just will take some time, is to read through a majority of the existing municipal ordinances that are in place,
Right.
and to see where they're different. Why did one town do X?
They're strikingly similar, believe it or not.
Why?
from
Yeah,
what
no,
I've seen.
but I'd like to see, because I know that, for instance, Lavalette, they had certain carve-outs. They had different limitations, for instance, when it came to that. I know, for instance, too, that this issue is currently being debated by the Freeholder Board here in Bergen, similarly to the ordinance presented by Common Cause, is similar to the ones that Freeholders Driscoll and Hermanson presented. And for instance, just real quickly, looking at the TNEC ordinance. The TNEC ordinance is inconsistent with the existing state laws because there's no such thing as a political action committee under New Jersey election law. It's called the CPC, a continuing political committee.
Mhm.
So, if I were TNEC, and I will call my friends in TNEC and say, hey, you should probably fix your ordinance so at least, is compliant, or at least within the language, that may be de minimis, but at least, within the language of the state. So I think I think this could be would be very educational and very fun. It's like making sausage, a lot goes into it,
As long as the final product's
Right.
good.
this final product is good, you know.
You don't wanna know what's in it.
Right, exactly. And I'd like to hear from, I don't think it would hurt us to hear from some of, the proponents and opponents.
I think that's a great idea.
You know, also, I would like to address the issue of disclosure. I know that we adopted an ordinance, 07-1325, an ordinance that I was very proud of, and particularly Councilwoman Zimchansky and I worked on it because we found ourselves in a situation where we were under the impression that our forms that were filed were in fact, according to ELEC, they had not been. And then we passed this, which I know that you seconded. But looking back on this ordinance, an ordinance is great if there is a consequence to not meeting that ordinance. And we don't have that. We have no ability to levy a fine or levy any type of punishment.
Well, maybe this is a good time to
amend it.
address
No,
that.
but that's exactly it. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? And getting back to the point of full disclosure, currently, as we know, as we read in the paper recently, you can write a check for $300 and it's not required to be reported
That's where
to the election law enforcement.
That's where I'm struggling in my mind.
You write a check for 301 cents, you have to report it. Right. So, the most recent fundraiser I could come to mind was $50 a ticket, and a ticket table was 10, so it's $500.
Right.
Well, maybe they only wanted to buy $250 or $300
Right.
worth.
Right.
So,
There's a loophole, you can drive a Mack truck.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's really
and not only that, ELEC has a flow chart.
Is that right?
They do. If you they have a matrix. I mean, visit the ELEC website. And it in itself is such a complicated and riddled with loopholes and inconsistencies.
In some places, contradictions.
Contradictions, exactly. And I almost wonder, and obviously we will not come to this conclusion, but this is my own opining on the issue, is that in Michigan, there's no corporate money permitted in campaigns, zero, whatever. But if you're an individual citizen, you can write a check for as much as you want.
Right.
And I know different states have different requirements, so, I mean, we won't even touch this. We'll leave that for the legislature, if they can ever get anything done, so.
And that's really, the struggle that I've had. 301 cent, there's gotta be full disclosure, and in some ordinances that I've read, that's a disqualification of a professional. $300, you can write as many $300 checks as long as it's a different person.
Right.
So, I mean, there's so many ways around this, and on your issue, or on your point, to your point on disclosure, I mean, the reason why, and I'll point to the Record article, I mean, the reason why the information was so readily available or to the reporter is because there was full compliance.
Right.
With the filing requirements.
Right, which is, we're meeting our minimum standards as required in this office.
So,
But I'm open, let's let the discussion begin, let's meet, let's get this underway, and I'll be more than happy to use the contacts that I have throughout the state to further advance this discussion.
Carl, would you mind categorizing the documentation and as you had suggested?
No, not at all.
Okay, and then maybe we'll set some meetings up and.
Yeah.
I'll do the analysis too on the different municipal.
Excellent.
That's my own curiosity. I just would like to review it and create a chart almost so that way, if there is a glaring change, maybe that's when we call up the town and say, hey,
Why did you do
why
that?
did you do that?
Sure.
You know what I mean?
What I would also do, I'll have Kathy, when she gets back, I'll have her put it on a electronic file, so if we need to reference it, instead of bringing all this paper, at least we can reference it.
Yeah, big PDF file.
PDF file, yeah, sure.
This is gonna be fun, like you said. I think I'm the newest one to this council, and this is gonna be very enlightening.
Yeah, no,
Because I don't understand this whatsoever. I used to read this in the paper.
Right.
And I had no clue.
Yeah.
So Carl dropped off some information. Harry started getting in touch with me and explaining it to me.
Right.
I'm really gonna enjoy this.
I think it's great.
One other thing I want to say is, I do think that we need some town participation in this too.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think we need to really analyze this from every aspect. get it right the first time. I mean, the benefit to doing it at this point is, I mean, a lot of towns have been down this road before, and you know, it's not like this is a pilot program in New Jersey that we're undertaking. Other towns have done it, so we can sort of, as Matt said, you know, see what worked for them, see what didn't work for them.
And within, you know, again, as the mayor and the chief executive officer in terms of borough's operations, and my first and foremost concern is making sure that we can do our job.
We can do our job, it does not affect
Right.
borough operations,
Right.
absolutely, that's
Right, you know,
paramount,
I wanna make
paramount
sure
important.
we've got a
Absolutely.
good lawyer, a good auditor, a good
Absolutely.
engineer.
Absolutely.
Like, I wanna keep moving and accomplishing
And that's a
such
great
large
point,
goal.
you know, that's a great point. The last thing we wanna do is put something in that's so restrictive, that we're disqualifying competent, firms that charge us a reasonable rate, you know,
Right.
because they're donating $301, and then the alternative, once they get disqualified, is employing less competent firms at a higher rate. It's an injustice to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, it's a great issue, and there's a lot here. I knew, you know, and that's what, I really wanted to just do an overview tonight,
Yeah,
and I think that's what we've done.
Little verbatim.
No, and I think, you know, we have, some kind of a game plan as to how we're gonna attack it, but this is not gonna happen overnight.
Yeah.
No, and I think that, and I've said this in public before, I think that our legislators, need to step up to the plate here,
Yeah,
both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they talk a lot.
well, do what I say,
Yeah,
you know.
and I think that, you know, leadership needs to come from the top down.
That we
Not-
gotta start somewhere too, though,
Yeah,
Carl. We can't
no,
do
no,
that.
no, I'm
We've
not
been
saying
waiting
that.
for years.
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is that,
His hair would be your color if we waited.
that their concern is, and we're gonna see this as we go
You're
through
ripping it
this,
out.
there's a quilt-work of ordinances out there that are similar but are not similar, you know, and I think that, what we're going to see is that the ordinance that have been put into place have to kind of address the needs of the local municipality. And I think that's what we're gonna see as we go through this process. And that, you still need an overriding, an umbrella, if you will. Like you said, when you read through this stuff, it's, in some points, you know, almost contradictory in nature, where you can drive a Mack truck through it because of the way it's been set up, you know?
You know, regardless of how you set it up, you know, there seems to be ways around it. I mean, I'm not an expert in campaign finance reform by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a novice. But, you know, if I could pick it apart and figure out ways around it, you know, but that being said, that's not an excuse not to do it.
No, that's, but it provides the landscape for it to happen.
Right.
And that's my point, you know, if our legislatures are truly interested in campaign finance reform, then that's what they should address, you know, and not, you know, couch it so that they can get the contribution some way else.
Let me ask you a question, and not that I wanted to get, but, you know, you guys know more about this than I do. You have a restriction of $301, or $300.01, you know, and I'm ABC Corporation. What stops me from giving $300 to my aunt, $300 to my cousin, $300 to, you know, my neighbor, and saying, you know, everyone contributed to, you know, Senator
I think
Smith?
you know, I know the answer to this question, but I'm not gonna be able to articulate it. I don't know if that's permissible. What I do know
But who
that,
knows?
an election lawyer. What I do know, what is not permissible is that, let's say Sue is my employee.
Okay.
I give $300. I give Sue Sue gets $300, and then
Right.
I reimburse her because she's my employee.
Right.
That's not permissible.
But if
When
you
it-
reimburse her in cash,
Well, but
I mean,
still,
that's-
and
the cynic in me says,
Yeah.
you know,
No.
a cash transaction, she writes a check to, you know, I'll throw Carl under the bus, she writes a check to Carl for $300.
Right.
You know, she's your employee, you give Carl 300, he's your employee, you give Carl 300, and you say, hey guys, here's the 300 in cash. I mean, who's
Right.
gonna know that 900 basically came from you?
Or let's say you have a partnership
Right.
where everyone has equal equity.
Okay.
And there are 5 partners in the equity, in the partnership, and the partnership writes a $1,500 check.
Mhm.
So they then send a letter saying, please attribute to each partner $300.
Right. Then that's okay.
Right.
But one person
I'll
giving
tell you right now,
300
Dakotas is notorious for that.
Oh.
They break it up among every frickin' partner that they
And
possibly
they've got
can.
like, what, 200?
Right. They'll write 50,000 in checks, and they'll send out letters. Please attribute 286 and 30 cents
Right.
to Harry Stone. So I mean that's part of the we can go on forever, and I know the purpose of tonight was to set up the schedule and document
Right, so-
distribution.
What works for you guys, Wednesdays or
Wednesdays or Thursdays,
Good.
or Mondays.
anybody?
Mondays,
Carl,
I can't.
Yeah,
Mondays,
yeah,
next
I like
week.
Wednesdays.
I like Wednesdays.
Right in the middle of the week.
So what, first and third, or?
I would
We have to check the court schedule, because they
Oh,
They meet
Court
on Wednesday.
Oh, we can meet upstairs if there's.
Oh, yeah, there's that too.
That's true.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah,
want a conference room.
yeah.
I would prefer, an alternating week from the normal mayor and council meeting.
Yes,
Just 'cause
good point.
2 nights in a row of
You
borough
wanna see my
stuff.
face 2 nights in a row?
No, it's not that, Harry, it just,
Yes,
it's
it
'cause
is.
it takes me 2 days to get ready for a meeting, and then, so, I mean, if you wanna do
Second and fourth?
Second and fourth Wednesday would work for me.
That's fine.
Just-
And listen, let's try to stick to the schedule, but obviously if 2 of us have a conflict, if, things come up, then
Yeah.
let's just, tie in with one another and say, let's, instead of Wednesday, let's make it Thursday.
So our next meeting would be, is next week, starting next Wednesday, we'll start the schedule.
Okay, so the 7th, where am I? So the 10th.
The 10th.
Okay.
The 10th.
Let me ask, before we start bringing in a lawyer into this, or an attorney, we need to start getting some stuff in line. I mean, like, we're not gonna bring the attorney next week.
No, I wouldn't.
Get all our ducks in a row?
Yeah, I would, before we start with the actual
When
legislative.
we get down to the final, I would say the final phase, when we start drafting stuff.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you
Yeah.
this, it's the 3rd, do you wanna just meet on the 24th, make it the 4th, and not, because otherwise we're gonna be meeting on the 10th and the 24th, we're gonna be meeting 3 times this month, and I don't know that we're gonna be able to get it, what we need to get together in 7 days or 6 days.
Okay.
So you wanna
Yeah, let's do the
just,
24th, that's
wanna do the
fine.
24th?
Yeah,
That's fine, 'cause that'll give me time to get that,
Right.
to get an analysis. What I'll do is I'm gonna be out of town on the 24th, but I'll just listen to the tape.
Okay.
So,
I'm gonna be out on the 24th.
this is maybe Kathy can fill in.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. This is fine, so 3/24. Let me know.
What would you need for that meeting?
Just the tape recorder, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as paperwork or.
Well, if we get any other
We're not sure yet.
stuff in.
Yeah, I think.
I'll start cataloging what we have.
Yeah.
Do you want me to contact other municipalities?
Yeah, I'll work directly with you, Sue.
Okay.
Because there's some that I know
Can
off
we
the
get
top of
one
my
from
head.
West Milton?
Yeah, I wanna get
So
West.
we find out what
I can go on
really
general
good fail over
code
there?
and look up different municipalities.
Yeah, West Milford, Lavalette has a really interesting one. There's one down in, I forget the name of it, it's like down in Gloucester
7
County.
PM?
Yeah.
7 p.m., yeah.
I forget it's even part of New Jersey, it's like crossing the Mason-Dixon line over there.
And they have good fruits and vegetables down
They do
there.
have, we are the Garden State.
That's right.
I'll tell you, it's a different world down there, though.
I have another issue I'd just like to, is now the appropriate
Sure,
time?
sure.
I had asked, and I mentioned at the last council meeting, and I think it's germane for this committee to review and consider.
Does it bark?
Yes, it does, and I'll tell you why, is that I've been having ongoing conversations with Walt Beveridge.
Right.
And he made some arguments, and I didn't really participate in the original formulation of the ordinance that failed regarding allowing dogs within a certain footage of, almost like an easement.
Right. I think it was 3 feet.
Yeah, and one of the things that I started, and I spent some time up there, and actually yesterday I'm on my way to our meeting afterwards, and I come to the corner of the pew and I stop, and thank God I came to a full stop, because behind the snow mound on Linden was a guy with a dog that I could have easily, if I'd rolled through the stop sign, would have taken out. One of the things, I think it's worth at least taking a look at.
Sure.
And also, one of the things I realized is that if you're walking down, what street does Thomas live on?
Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Straight through.
You
talking to
can't walk
Pershing.
straight through, right, you gotta go all the way around the park.
It's just gotta be careful, because I was down there once, and there was some kids playing basketball.
Yeah.
And they had this pit bull in the car.
Yeah.
And they let it out.
Yeah.
And it's running around the basketball courts with little kids.
I had Greg put together a resolution, which he did not get to me till about like 6 minutes ago. But one of the things that, and you'll see, I'll circulate it tonight, is that if we were to permit, dogs in certain portions of the park, there would have to be a radius away from recreation facilities, there would have to be like a 3-foot leash, there would have to be, I don't want to say muzzle, but those strap
Right.
things so you can't nip.
I got the worst problem. My wife bitches and moans and do and everybody else, because she has 2 dogs and she can't get
Oh, yeah, my wife
from
would love it.
Hamilton to Persian.
Right.
But I tell you, you can't bring the dogs in the park.
Right, so I think, so I'm gonna circulate that, we can talk about it later, but also one of the things I had Greg, and I haven't read the ordinance yet, but one of the things I thought about was, if if an incident does occur, if the dog is banned from the park and a fine is incurred, I mean, there needs to be a clear
They have to
consequence.
have consequences, absolutely.
Right, and they need to stay away from the kids, and they need to stay away from the recreation facilities, and they need to make sure that they clean up after themselves.
Right, right.
And maybe we as the borough need to revisit a dog park, but that's a whole different.
Right.
So
I
it's
will.
just so tough for kids. I mean, trust me, I love to see my dogs in the park.
Yeah,
But
I
with
think
kids
it's the
running
out of
around.
towners that are not gonna respect the restrictions, and we're gonna have to have some stiff fines.
Yeah, no, so I haven't read the document yet, but I'll be passing that around.
All right.
I got you a little information about the DPW if you want.
I saw it, yeah, they got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So are we okay, or?
Yeah, no, we're good.
And you did, somebody did, I only found out last night, John only told me that, they thought Billy had a heart attack.
Why?
He had
Monday,
palpitations again.
Yeah.
He's okay.
I let John know, he's
He's
gotta let me know,
Yeah.
because I didn't find out until after the fact. And, it's one of our lead guys,
Yeah, no, that's.
and maybe you knew, but I didn't know.
I don't know, Billy's gotta be
He'll be
healthy.
back to work tomorrow,
Good.
but he has heart palpitations.
Yeah.
So they took him off of caffeine, with
I
all
have
the hours that he
palpitations.
worked.
Yeah.
Well, I snowstorm.
I had to have a conversation with John, and this is not the appropriate place, but I'm concerned about OSHA requirements.
Right.
Yeah, we gotta work out some, but we'll talk about that. You and I will talk offline about that, because I had the same concern.
Okay.
Because when I was monitoring it, I'm like, clock's getting close here, so.
We're running guys a lot of hours.
Yeah, but they did a damn good job.
Yeah.
Compared to the towns around us.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, night and day.
I couldn't go to work Friday because Tenafly and Clinton Avenue, I couldn't get up the hill. I got out of Dumont fine, but I couldn't get up Clinton Avenue.
Do you think that they would put the brine down and just plow the hell out of it?
Billy told me that there was 2 plows stuck in Bergenfield that went on the side, because they didn't prepare to do this snow job, a day earlier.
Well, that's, and I gotta say, on Billy's behalf,
That's all credit to
he's
Billy.
always,
Yeah,
he's always prepared.
Right.
Whether the snow comes or not, he's ready.
Right. Well, right now, he's cutting down, he's trying to catch up on all the tree limbs.
Yeah.
Because we've got a lot of fallen houses.
Well, they were out the next day.
Cables.
They were out the next day with the truck.
All right, he's
And
still doing
the
it now.
grinder, yeah.
Until he gets back tomorrow, figure out what's going on.
Dude, we have a snow blower, correct? Do we? Yeah, we have a borough snow blower, we have a couple borough snow
Yeah,
blowers.
I think so.
Does
I
they-
don't know if they're boroughs or the Board of Eds.
Well, we have to get, one of the things I noticed is that we didn't plow out the pathway at the park.
That's right, yeah.
That kind
Oh,
of.
we should-
And actually, no, there was not
No,
one.
we're going to another town, River Edge.
River Edge did
They
fine.
had that, they did their pathway.
Yeah, I thought of it, when I almost took out the guy with his dog.
Just one more thing about that, I think we're gonna get a little stricter, and Carl was part of it when I was, the people aren't doing the fire hydrants.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw a couple
It's
places.
just not, it's getting ridiculous. They're not
Yeah.
gonna be able to see it. I've seen people actually blowing snow up on top of them.
Yeah.
So whoever's house is, if we gotta go and give them a fine,
And
Well,
the
that's
top
a
of the.
conversation Steve has to have with
Yeah.
his code enforcers.
They
when
talked
well,
they're-
I don't know if
about
it's us
that
telling Steve that
Yeah.
it needs to be done.
You told that there?
And they decided that they're gonna give violations.
Good,
Okay,
all right,
good.
that's
They
fine.
should.
Yeah.
And people who are repeat offenders, if they're throwing snow in the street, that's unacceptable. But we're totally getting off topic of our agenda.
I'm sorry, you brought me in, I just have one more about the snow.
I know.
We have a lot of older people that
But-
actually called into Billy and, are not able to do their plowing.
Yeah.
Any other business as far as ordinances and resolutions? You know what, I'm gonna move to open the meeting up to the public, if anyone has any comments, can I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay, second by, Manna, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anybody from the public wanna speak on these issues?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, thank you for
Can you
letting
just
me be
identify
here.
yourself?
I'm sorry, my name's Julie Otto, O-T-T-O, and I'm representing, Urban Grassroots,
Okay.
Paul Eisenman. And
Okay.
I wanted to thank you very much for letting us, sit in on the meeting, and I'll give my notes back to Paul, and everything sounded great.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Can I
you.
have your address, please?
3041 Edwin Avenue in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Motion, I move to close to the public, can I get a second?
So moved.
Seconded by, Manna, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Carrick, seconded by Manna,